You realize because like Morgan's gone up north, right?
Yeah.
Up in Harvey Bay, and it gets more tropical the further north you go, which is obviously the opposite of
Yeah.
yeah. So that's kind of
Everything's the
trippy.
opposite. So we're inverted. But she's in a great part of the world. I was watching a show you did with a lady in Harvey Bay, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
And Harvey Bay is brilliant. So love it up there. I was supposed to go a couple of weeks ago to Queensland and everything got cancelled because of lockdowns. So
You guys still on lockdown?
we're not in Melbourne, but Sydney is badly locked down.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I think Brisbane and Queensland's coming out of it. But, if it's not Melbourne, it's Sydney. If it's not Sydney, it's somewhere else. So it's a bit like whack-a-mole.
So it's good to see you, by the way, and
Thank you.
it was good to see you on the open discussion the other night. And you were talking about something.
Yeah.
You were it was really cool because obviously you're an attorney.
Yeah.
And you were talking about how you're choosing to be in 3D, but like in 5D, but plugging into 3D.
Yeah.
People think I'm 5D now, so I live totally in 5D. And you said it very eloquently. I mean, very calmly, very, assuredly. You just said, I'm engaging with purpose and intention, 3D.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to talk about that just a little bit.
I'd love to, because a lot of what I reference goes back to Franco Di Nicola's way of looking at things or explaining things, right? So there's the 3D that we've been living in, which is inverted, where everything is hijacked and everything with good intentions has been hijacked. And then there's the 5D that most people talk about, that we're moving to, right? Which is being lighter, more in spirit, and so on. But then Franco also talks about the organic 3D, which is 3D as we were designed to be, without the inversion and the hijacking. And that's a utopian space, actually, because it's sensorial, it's an ability to be in our bodies, but yet connected to Earth and connected to each other and understanding that we're part of something bigger. So it's actually like the space the gods wanted to play in, right, when they created the Earth.
Yeah.
And so if we could take it back, and like you said, with intent and purpose, we remove the inverted structures, which are now all really kind of mental projections from us and our egos. Remove those things and build. Well, you got to not remove them so much as build the new, or build the organic.
Yeah.
And if you do that,
it's like boots on the ground. It's like physical, like
it's truly quite granular.
Yeah. And if you think about it, okay, so let's say you have two study groups, two target groups.
Yeah.
And they both originate from one target group, and that target group is you or me, anybody that's incarnated right now. Okay. And so they have this wealth of experience that was very distorted in the inverted 3D. That's shut down. It's fading away quickly. And there's two playgrounds to choose from. And one of them is 3D and one of them is 5D, and when you don't think about it, you just go, I'm going to 5D. But what you're talking about is this original target group is a person, a soul, who has this huge wealth of experience in contrast. And now he can move in, or she can move into this organic 3D, which has contrast built into it. Okay. But it's not distorted contrast. You could say it's a softer contrast. It's even like, I'd say, an off planet compared to what we've been known to type of contrast. So that itself is an Eden-esque type of experience. Right. And then over here, and again, this one over here that I'm speaking of, you would think would be very organic, right? Like very earthy. And this one over here would seem to more have like more of a galactic kind of interdimensional stuff coming in and into your reality. So I never thought about that until you came on the show the other day. And then you talked a little bit about how you actually do that in your work.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I don't remember what field you're in, but it was significant to what you're doing.
Yeah. So I'm doing a couple of things in my work now, right? So up until last year, end of last year, I was working as a partner in a big law firm, which is kind of like your classic inverted 3D job,
Yeah.
Corporate law. And I'd been more or less transitioning it to a softer kind of law, which is more about governance of companies that want to work with purpose. I do what we call modern slavery reporting, which is companies looking at their supply chains to make sure they haven't got forced labor and slavery in their supply chains. Kind of nice, responsible law, right? But I was doing that and I wanted to step out of the structure that I was working in. So I did that end of last year. Now I work for myself. So I still do that kind of work for myself, from my study here. And it's great and I enjoy it. But because it's also helping companies to move towards a more responsible way of being, which ties into that organic 3D structure that we are building. But the other thing I do is I do this podcast, which connects in with other lawyers. And some people are doing fantastic work, Todd. Like they are really dismantling old ways of practicing law. And they are really building light-filled concepts and movements.
Really?
It's like, yeah. So it's like take a contract, right? So I talk to people on my show who they're lawyers, but they draft for their clients conscious contracts. So like, let's say you and I decide to go into some sort of venture together.
Right.
We're both light workers. We both want to build something positive, but we both want to know where we stand. So I want to know what you're going to do. You want to know what I'm going to do. What happens if something does go wrong? It's not all penalties and punitive ideas. It's just about building something, but we still want to have our rights and values written down.
Yeah.
So this conscious contract is written down in a really constructive way. So the lawyer, your lawyer and my lawyer, or conscious lawyers both, sit down and talk about what we're trying to build. And we build this values-based contract that's like a living document that means something to us. And in that work, we also get to understand what you're bringing and what I'm bringing.
Yeah. Yeah. In the old world, I was involved with quite a few startups, and you would have, in a true startup, you would have core values. And I think of what you're saying, and it's like you're putting it into verbiage. I mean, do you have like conscious statements in those types of agreements?
Yeah. So my podcast, I saw someone was asking, it's the New Earth Lawyer. So newearthlawyer.com is where I'm at. Okay. And so there's a lady called Kim.
I'm going to put it on all the platforms. Okay. The New Earth what?
New Earth Lawyer.
Oh, okay, I got you. .com.
Yeah. There's a lady I interviewed first up who was like my mentor and my coach for a while. Oh no, it's not it's just New Earth Lawyer.
Oh, I'll do it again.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so she really is one of the pioneers of this movement. She calls it integrative law. And it really pulls in many of these concepts like conscious contracts and value-based contracting and goes further. You can think of any area of law, and she has found practitioners or ideas that are being developed that take it back to what it's intended to be, right? Which is really making sure that the fabric of society is smooth and people can really express themselves and be their true selves. So Kim did values work with me. Kim Wright is her name. She did values work with me. And we went quite deep into finding out what my own values were. And out of that, I just lived my life true to my values. And you can do that for an organization, and you can do that for people. Yeah. It probably works better for smaller organizations. I don't know whether big corporates really have a role in the new.
Well, that'd be too hard. That'd be too hard. You'd have to stop. You'd have to start at the top. I mean, it would have to be like in formation, like a startup. But you're right. You could apply this to so many different things. I'm excited to hear that there are light worker attorneys who are collaborating and co-creating. I just put up a post a minute ago. I was on a little meme fling, sitting on the couch, communing. But in regard to collaboration, I put in the meme, Trinity, the Trinity energy runs on collaboration. So no more hiding, come out and play. And what I mean by that is that this thing grows, and you know this. I mean, we're talking about soul, we're talking about Holy Spirit, whatever you want to call it, whatever's happening to us. As it's engaged with two or more people, it starts to expand in an exponential way, and it's been happening, and it's going to be happening more and more. So this is exciting to me. So these folks that you talk to, I mean, these are people like you. I mean, I'm not going to say they're exactly alike. Maybe they are, but they would walk into, or when they walk into a courtroom, or they look at the energy of the legal system, they're looking at it from a place of less ego, of a higher vantage point, and they're approaching it that way, and they're embodying it within themselves and taking it to that environment to change it.
Yeah, absolutely. So they are both male and female legal practitioners I speak to. I have to say that in my experience, the females are a little bit ahead, but I've spoken to, there was one man I spoke to, his name is Peter Lustig. He does a lot of work with men's groups. So he was a litigation attorney, right? So he was a head kicker, he described himself as. And then he had this transformation where he realized that he was just exacerbating trauma in his clients, right?
Wow.
Because when conflict shows up in a person's life, it's like disease showing up for a patient. It's actually the mirror. It's actually showing you something's wrong. So lawyers are like doctors in that sense, right? Like instead of the doctor treating the symptom, the doctor should be treating the root cause. That's what a healer should do. Same with lawyers. So we've got to be saying, why is this conflict showing up in your life? So Peter, through his inner work, realized that that was his role. And now he's what we call a collaborative practitioner. So it doesn't go into courtrooms. When the conflict shows up, he you could call it mediation, but it's deeper than mediation.
Yeah.
He looks for a resolution. And it's like both sides. So he was giving me examples of business disputes between men who had been partners for 30 years, and one was a godfather to the other's children. And then they had this horrible dispute, and it came down to things like price. How much are you going to buy out my business interest for? And Peter ended up saying to them, like, think not about what you want from this man, but what he's given you. And then start from there. And like that, they settled on a price. And everybody was, rather than causing more trauma to them, which the legal system does, their conflict was healed.
Yeah.
And they could move on.
It feels like the, like the kingly judge type of energy of like a divine masculine, energy. Like they trust, they put him here because it's not mediation. You're not cutting the deal. You're just basically putting everything on the table openly, which is a total opposite of the legal system. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And there's a lady I spoke to who does collaborative divorce. So just think about the many little lives that she's protecting from trauma, because kids and the trauma they go through when their parents split up, right? So she's been doing that work for 15, 20 years. And she just tells the clients, if you want to get divorced, we're not going to courtroom. You want to take this to court, you need another lawyer.
Wow.
And then her practice is about not just that collaborative approach, but she's got, like child psychologists in her network, financial advisors to help people sort out their finances so that they'll both be okay and the kids will be okay. So really holistic also. But she's just, think of the ripples that legal conflicts have in the society that we're in, right? Like it's just your kid, your parents get divorced, you take that trauma with you, you grow up, you take it out on somebody else. She's just stopping that right there. So just like the effect she's having is
amazing. Immense. That's amazing. You're speaking to somebody who went through a pretty brutal one. I caught a lot of a few bombs exploded, but yeah. So you're right. I mean, it's like these people are going into their. It's really what it's the same thing. It's like say what I do, or many people in this community, what they do, posting and doing shows and running communities on their websites. And I mean, they're very much applying their consciousness to what they're doing as a passion or we call a job or whatever, right?
Yeah, exactly. But a common thread amongst the conversations I have, and I've really only just started, 3 months ago or something, so I've only had 10 conversations with people, but I've got others lined up, and it is really exciting. So the common thread is that people got into law school often with this idea of helping, with this social justice idea, and I was similar. And then law school, you learn all the cut and dried black letter law, and you go out into the legal system, and man, it gets beaten out of you, right? It just totally is about being adversarial, winning the point, making sure that your client wins the match, etc. And it's brutal. So a lot of people leave.
Brutal profession.
Yeah. So a lot of people leave, but then the people I'm talking to found a way to bring that love and compassion back. And by the way, like we actually also have huge levels of mental issues in our profession, right? So we have high levels of addiction, anxiety, depression, suicide, blah, blah, because we take it on. So we take on this horrible way of working. We take on, the trauma that the community has suffered at the hands of lawyers comes back to us, right? When I go out and I talk about New Earth lawyers, sometimes I advertised on Facebook a few of my podcast episodes. I got this vitriolic response back from some people. It's like, I hate lawyers and I don't believe that there's a single good lawyer out there. So that reflects back on us. This hatred that the community has for us, just the low standing.
It's a brutal business, but I mean, it's the same in the corporate world I was in. You come out with the same idealism, and you go, I'm going to, and then you realize you're working in, that's where that core values statement memory came when you were talking, because I worked for this company and we was a startup and we sold it to the largest company in the country, after a few years. But the core values, there was a day when the main core value broke down, which was basically always do what's right no matter what. If your boss doesn't agree, take it to the next level. There's a formal process for this. So it put the CEO in a position to always do the right thing and hear everything, a lot like your friend in that role that he's playing. But the day that it wasn't held up, only one time, the whole time I was there, it broke the whole tapestry of everything. It changed the energy of everything. So this is exciting, and it's also you said something that really shouldn't be, or that should be restated, and that is that in that profession, not unlike nurses and doctors and many other professions, there is a high rate of what we call mental affliction or mental challenges, right?
Yeah, because we are working with such cognitive dissonance, right? Like we're saying one thing and doing another. So we're saying we're upholding the law, we're saying we're about justice, and then all we're doing is about self-interest. So that whole service to self element comes out so strongly in the practice of law because it's been thoroughly hijacked. And really, it's a service profession. It's a vocation. It's a calling. It's a service to the community. And if you can find that again, the service to the community part, then you can rebuild. And what's exciting is working with, I'm beginning to work with groups. So the groups are coming together. There was a really interesting lady I interviewed. Her name is Amanda Lamond. She's in South Africa. She's awakened. Like she channels.
Let me ask you a question. This is freaking fascinating. I could talk like hours on this. And how did you find these people? Is there, Mary Rodwell has, I guess, been like has built a nucleus of information over the years, and people have gone to her, and she's told us on this show that I think it was about 1.5 years ago, she said that like, scientists and doctors and such were reaching out to her that were having wake-up experiences. And so they wanted to form these private groups, and these groups have gotten louder and more and bigger. But like, is there one for attorneys? I mean, how did you run into this? Has it all been just
we're building. That lady I mentioned, Kim Wright, she goes by J. Kim Wright. She's like the godmother of it all, right? Like the fairy godmother of this movement. So she's was based in Florida, and she had this epiphany that I was describing, that law school's full of jerks, the law is full of jerks. She's got to find another way, and so she began like a nomadic existence. She just basically traveled the world, sold up a house in her practice, traveled the world finding people who were looking for a new way of practicing law. So she's like the hub. And when I was going through my dark night of the soul as a corporate lawyer, thinking there's got to be a better way, because I know that we're here for more than this, I Googled one day, I was working in contracts. I Googled conscious contracts, right? I was like, I must find someone who's doing this stuff. Google conscious contracts, and Kim's name came up, and she was doing coaching. So I reached out to her, like totally cold, and said, I need a coach. She coached me, and she introduced me to her amazing network. She's written a couple of books for the American Bar Association. One is called Lawyers as Changemakers. The other is called Lawyers as Peacemakers. And they're just full of stories about these lawyers. So that's her network.
She sounds like the Mary Rodwell of the legal profession.
She is. That's it. She is the Mary Rodwell.
That's what it sounds like.
Profession.
It's you know what I'm noticing as we've gotten into 2021, the work that people have been doing, especially those that have been doing it a long, long time, like the Francos and the Marys and this lady, are starting to explode, right? They're starting to get a lot of traction. And I think that comes from the consistency, of doing it over the years.
Yeah, but there's something that there's a turning point for the movement, in that the movement's very 3D. By that I mean, a lot of people who are in it out of the pure goodness of their hearts, right? Because they know there's a better way, but they're not necessarily deeply spiritual or understanding that there's a higher power. Some are not at all, but most are.
They're not militant spiritual activists.
Yeah, but they're just really pure-hearted.
Oh yeah.
So what's happening in the movement is that there's a lot of work being done, but it's still attaching to inverted control structures.
Yeah.
So it's things like, we know what the old control structures are, the criminal justice system and governments trying to enforce their will on people. But the new control structures are pretty crafty. The new control structures are things like, and lawyers get taken in by this all the time, they're things like the corporate social responsibility movement, or climate risk, and making sure that your company is sustainable. Now, all of that has good intentions behind it, right?
Yeah.
But totally gets hijacked.
Yeah.
So the diversity movement goes from making sure everybody is heard, respected, can bring themselves to work, etc. Gets totally hijacked into, if you don't follow the standard woke script, you're a white supremacist.
I was just going to say, it's the same energy playing out there right now. It's the same thing. Which has made it interesting because it's interesting because I'm seeing the word light worker used in starseeds sometimes, but light worker, like they'll say patriots and light workers.
Yeah.
To me, that's like night and day. Like, I'm not judging anything. I'm choosing over here where I'm like going, okay, I'm very open. I'm past the dark and light thing. So I see that as two separate energies. But And that's really not even the hijacking. That's just actually the consequences of it becoming more permeated into the field. You know, this big
But
mixing
see,
bowl.
I would put it this way, that you're moving to a 0 point. You know, you see the shadow, you see the light, and you're moving to 0 point.
True.
But a lot of people who are in this space with good intentions don't even appreciate the shadow, right? So they don't want to look at the shadow. They're just light and love. And I have seen the shadow. It depresses everybody at a point, I think, if you get into the shadow stuff. But move through it. And I don't want to dwell in it either, which is why I'm not one of those fighters, right? I've moved out of system. I was idealistic, moved out of system. I rebelled. I don't want to become a fighter. I want to become what Franco calls a redesigner. But if you want to be a redesigner, you got to appreciate the shadow for what it is, so that you can make sure that you don't get lost in, like my example of the diversity movement. You don't get lost in promoting that stuff without realizing that you're promoting it under a hijacked agenda. You know, so all of the effort that's going into it is actually serving the shadow. You got to see it for what it is.
It's actually
so that you're serving light. Oh, it's false light.
To me, from I'm big into stories, and I see things like in stories. To me, it's very romantic. It's like I'm talking about, like, from a hero's journey type of, like, you're actually plugging in where you want to. It's very much an embodied field, and I love this whole thing about, you know, I'm going to speak for myself. I'm looking at the earth, and I love the earth. You know, I love life. But I have a certain perspective of it. And since you made that comment the other day, and now that we're talking now, I'm looking at it totally different. What happens if I go to sleep and I wake up tomorrow and it's totally an organic earth, like 3D? Like, that would be pretty cool.
Oh, it's so cool.
That would be pretty
I
cool.
actually think that you know, it's part of my purpose. So I've been reflecting on it, and I actually think this, Todd, like, I came in, you know, went to law school, became a lawyer, reflected a long time on why I am a lawyer, and actually think it's part of my purpose. I believe that the organic 3D, it could be a beautiful, like exquisitely beautiful example. It might not last for very long. So it might last for, I don't know, a decade or two before we completely transform into 5D. But it's so human and unique to humans. Like, you take Australia. So what I'm seeing is that we're going to have a natural law system that's based on natural law, so aligned with spirit, aligned with the earth, you know, that puts the person first, but yet finds a way for us all to live in harmony as one. Take Australia. We will have a legal system, I hope, that is closely connected with the Indigenous way of living. So it's going to be a natural law system, but with that unique expression that's Australian, because we live on the land here, and we're connected to this land. And the Indigenous know all about that. So they are strongly connected between the land, the people, spirit, and the law. Those four things, all interconnected. The land gives them the law. The land is, you know, has a connection with the people. The land is an expression of spirit. And you can draw the lines between those four things. And so if I, in the new earth, identify as an Australian, I'm going to get along perfectly fine with someone who's living in Japan, but we'll have a slightly different expression of who we are. And I'll enjoy going to Japan because their expression of who they are based on the land that is Japan is going to be also beautiful and unique, right? Yeah. So you can see that you know, we're a planet that has all of these different expressions within the same planet, and what's going to be uniquely human is to create a system of sacred government, sacred statehood, sacred diplomacy between those lands and cultures. And then you put the overlay of commerce on top of it, right? Like, sacred commerce that is about allowing people to express a part of themselves, like Soulogy. If that's an expression of you, it's an enterprise as well. And you run it on a sort of commerce. It's a gift-based commerce, but it's still commerce. So humanity could create this like beautiful tapestry that's a model. And even after we've transitioned to 5D, that model is going to serve. Like we might take it somewhere else, or
it's still
other
code.
races might. It's code.
It's new code. I mean, it's powerful because I'm sitting here thinking you're making me just blow up. Why wouldn't we spend 10, 15 years? I mean, if we only had 10 or 15 years, because a couple things. One, this is going the way we know it's going. We're going to be regenerating very quickly. We're going to be living a lot longer. So what's the rush? It's not like we're going to be here 30 years. So if there was a 10 or 15 or 20 year period where there was an organic 3D and creative energy could be, emitted unimpeded and without distortion, you would have some serious code. And the reason you would have it, because you would be in, let's just say, a lower dimension than that 5D, right? And you would have a bigger field. You would have a bigger field. So you would have that physical human touch, I guess is what it would be. That would be some serious code. So that'd be a good playground.
Physical human touch and the earth touch, like Gaia herself expressing herself. It's gorgeous. And that's why I brought up the indigenous aspect to it, because they had a kind of organic 3D lifestyle, but without technology as we know it. They had their own technology. And I now work a little bit with Aboriginal groups, and I'm beginning to read as much as I can. There's not a lot out there of Aboriginal tradition, and it's just that is full of code too, right? And there's so much that we're going to bring in. It'd be the same in Native America. It'd be the same in South America. There's so much that we can bring in from those traditions into the next 10, 15 years.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And again, that's code. I mean, that's like taking it's taking everything. It's taken as much as you can from that expanse of the experience. And even then you would have brothers and sisters at the 5D level who can send that code down to even, it's an interesting thing if you look at the energy of it. Now, Mary talked about these professionals when they first reached out to her, that they wanted to have some private groups so they could talk about, and then I remember talking to her a few months later, and this would have been into, I want to say like into this time of year last year, like when COVID was 3 or 4 or 5 months into place. And I remember her, I think, telling me that it was starting to expand a little bit. In other words, it wasn't quite as hush hush, maybe. That I don't want to get it wrong, but it like that's kind of the impression she gave. So is that, and you're in Australia, which seems to be progressive, seems to be both, but I mean, the people have like a progressive attitude. Are you and your contemporaries, I mean, are you finding it, have they started to attract any attention or anything? Or are they just kind of moving like a guerrilla warfare, just quietly? And
so a couple of things, right? So things that are the movement that's based on the Kim Wright's movement, which is integrative law, is attracting attention that's positive. So she's busier than she's ever been. She's teaching workshops and so on. That doesn't have a massive spiritual expression to it. It's more about positive change to the world. Right. Things that have a spiritual expression to it, that's what Mary Rodwell's talking about, is more nascent. On Friday, I'm connecting in with a group started by Amanda Lamond in South Africa, who is the channeler. And she's been called by her guides to set up a metaphysical council of lawyers. 12
Wow.
lawyers. So they've told her, this is your work now. And I interviewed her a few weeks ago. She's amazing. She's been channeling since 2012. So she had her awakening in 2012. You should have her on your
This
show.
is awesome. So,
So we're
and
going to
now
have a metaphysical council.
you've mentioned 3 women,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
And you did say that you've had men and women on your show, but I would think that even though that's a very male dominated profession, you know, I mean, I don't know what the numbers are, I'm sure it's majority male, and has been for years. But what I'm saying is, is the representation proportionate to that, like in these light worker groups like Soulogy? I mean, is it mostly women?
Yeah,
I mean, I
it's
think
mostly women.
that's a good sign to me too. I think that's a great sign, because
Yeah.
they're gonna be less. First of all, they're more intuitive, and they're going to be less imprinted in terms of their just second nature behaviors than a typical male getting into the legal profession. Because most of the males in the legal profession, by the time the legal profession gets a hold of them, just like it happened to me, become very alpha. You have to become alpha if you want to. Yeah.
The legal profession has got masculine, not healthy masculine energy baked into it.
Yeah.
Because it's about the competition, right?
Yeah.
So the women, like this group I'm connecting with on Friday, is all women. It's going to be 12 women. So Amanda reached out to the spiritual lawyers she could think of. And so we're going to start with women, and it'll be a little bit like the circle that you and Morgan got together. So I actually told her about it, and she said, well, we'll try something like that. So it's going to be a group of 12 lawyers getting together, and really, we'll each contribute what we want to contribute, but it's going to be about creating that space. So that's the metaphysical part, and that's really nascent, Todd. And what I see as my role is to bring into these groups of really well-intentioned lawyers doing hard graft, like just, they're really getting it at the coalface and doing work, to bring a few messages, which are really basic messages.
Wow.
And it's just not to force things onto people. Like, it's never about forcing things, but to tell them that this is a spiritual calling. Firstly, it's an ascension. So like, no one's doing this alone. We're doing this together. It's a shift. And then finally, to remind them of the shadow, and not to get caught up in fake light or false light structures. That last part's a little tricky. It's just to put it out there. And then to make sure that all of these councils that we're convening, and groups that we're convening are really infused with, spiritual consciousness.
Yeah. So you're talking about, like, these 12 on this, it sounds profound. Like, it sounds like something big, like a lot bigger than it, you know what I mean? But these 12 women, including yourself, so all of these 12, are they people that are, I guess, just in layman's terms, working on themselves, like in the same things that we talk about here? I mean, like living that lifestyle of being self-aware, growth, and that type of thing?
Yeah, so I'm going to find out, because I only know Amanda, and I've connected since with a couple others. I'm going to find out, but I believe so. So into meditation, that lifestyle that's,
well, if she channels, and if her channeling didn't scare them off, I would imagine they're okay.
Yeah, I mean, Amanda is amazing. So she's actually downloaded a message for humanity, right? And she shared it with me, and she said, what do I do with this? And should we get it out there more? And I said, just put it out there, and whoever reads it will read it. She's totally, awake.
Wow.
And the message was really consistent with everything else we've been seeing. Yeah.
Wow, this is cool.
I mean, there's probably something else I was going to say, and there was that connection with. I also got a similar message. Now, I was called to go to Uluru last December for the solstice event, right? Which was the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction, and the ceremony at Uluru that Stephen and Evan Strong were helping to coordinate. And when I was there, I also had an energy come in there was a cosmic conference or cosmic consciousness conference there. I had an energy come in that was really like that wise counselor type you were talking about. And it was about, okay, well, this is time now. And it was around that time that I was getting this feeling of, that word, that expression, New Earth Lawyer, was just kind of feeding into my brain. New Earth Lawyer, New Earth Lawyer. I didn't know what it meant. And so from Uluru, I took a couple of months, 2-3 months to really give birth to the podcast. But then when it was time, and it happened very quickly. So I think it's sacred work in a sense, and it is bigger than it is big, to go back to what you're saying. I think it's an energy of creating the new natural law system. Well, it's not new in a sense, bringing back the natural law system, but making sure that humanity aligns with natural law from now on. And for the initial stages of it, lawyers who have been trained in old legal ways are going to have to help.
Yes, far out. I just went to your website, and I see Amanda Lamont.
Yep.
I'm seeing your show. It's very nice, very well done. NewEarthLawyer.com.
Yeah.
Solo episodes. You got solo episodes.
So the solo episodes, that was also,
these are My Ayahuasca Chronicles. Is that you?
Yeah. So a few weeks ago. So my solo episodes are just about 15-20 minutes of me talking to camera. And I started off doing things you might see all the episodes. Some of them were really targeted at young people and the things that they're going through in the law. So, what happens, how to keep healthy when you're working insane hours, what diversity really means, breaking through this so-called bamboo ceiling and things like that. So it was really mainstream stuff. It was stuff you could safely put up on LinkedIn and no one would bat an eyelid, right? I was getting quite a lot of kudos as well. People saying, great work, Geraldine, from the mainstream. But then a couple of weeks ago, I woke up one morning and I was like, oh, okay, so now I have to talk about ayahuasca, which I did in Peru in 2017. I was like, oh, really? Okay. I'll open up about it. So I did 3 episodes. I've just finished them, about what I downloaded in Peru when I did ayahuasca, which was about, changing the world. And I put the first one up on LinkedIn. And I gave this typical lawyer's warning of, ayahuasca, treat it with caution, etc. It's a psychedelic. I thought I was being responsible, but LinkedIn took it down. So LinkedIn took down my post about my episode about ayahuasca. And so I haven't bothered to put the follow-ons up there.
Well, they're on your website, though, aren't they?
They're on my website, but I had a post on LinkedIn.
Well, so I was going to say,
that
to that question I asked earlier, are they, how are they assimilating their new frequency, you guys, into the structure of it? And really, you already are. That's what you're doing, because if you think about it, in a profession like that, any attorney is exposing themselves, even having a podcast, even putting up a post, or even publicizing that they channel. Because, I mean, in a court of law, depending on the case, it could be pulled out. I mean, you never know. But this is a fascinating thing. It gives me a lot of validation that, because I've always felt that there's the same proportion of people, like a makeup of a group, in any group there is. And again, levels of waking up, or perceptions of levels of waking up. There's woke lawyers, there's woke doctors. They're beginning to collaborate and come together in a cohesive manner, and with a conscious intention, which is powerful. That's just
It is powerful. It's the work. I mean, the work in the sense of actual building. which means that we're here, right? We're here in the new earth, because we're starting to get the people who are bringing their ideas into the physical. And so this is truly the start of it.
Man, you know, and that's such a, and like everything else, I mean, like people are saying, wow, look what's going on. But again, it's as within, without. So it's a good thing that all this stuff is coming up. But there's some really, really dark stuff that's built into the legal system, because in the legal system, then you've got to kind of marry that with the incarceration system, especially over here in the U.S. So, I mean, the fact that people in an atmosphere like that, which is really a microcosm of all of us, right? They're in this. They have to be functional. They have to do A, B, C, D, and E to be part of the herd mentality, or the perception that you're a part of it. You're three thinkers in private groups, but now these people are unplugging. They've gone conscious into themselves, and now they're going back into this mixing bowl with their new consciousness. And one thing about people that are doing work on themselves, I mean, you'd have to say that they're approaching, as the days go by, more and more everything that they do with conscious intention. Yeah. And now you've got where two or more gather, and you have, like Mary talked about, somebody else talked about it, where you start to have these people that have the credibility by by the standards or the perspective of let's say the mainstream, right, or the professional community, and they start to blend into this thing. It's going to snowball.
Yeah, we give each other confidence. We give each other assurance. So I've had, when I went to Peru, did ayahuasca, I had friends who were professionals also, who did leave the mainstream, and like you described, going back in now with the new higher consciousness. Yeah. And we challenge each other to, in a friendly way, obviously in a loving way, to put ourselves out there, to talk about the spiritual, to talk about higher consciousness in mainstream platforms. And what's amazing is that I will put things up on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So LinkedIn, I have a few, not many, but a few really good friends who are definitely mainstream, well-intentioned people, but mainstream, supporting me. When I put up my ayahuasca stuff, I had an old mentor come tell me, that was amazing, well done. Wow. Even though, he's not the kind of bloke who would do ayahuasca in a million years, in this lifetime anyway. Yeah. And then on Facebook, I've had friends reaching out who are in quite high positions in the corporate world, who have been asking me kind of quietly, about awakening and so on, because they're feeling the pull. And they're coming out and they're supporting me on Facebook, saying that was a great episode, and thanks for sharing with me, and thanks for sharing your experiences. So people are coming out now. Yeah. The support is actually, like, wouldn't have had this a year ago even. Yeah. I obviously I do this every day, and then I study a lot of different things. I spend, my spare time when I'm not doing this, I'm not doing anything else. But one of the things I notice is, even if I'm talking like TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, anything that's out there, and what people are clicking to. So you have like this victim consciousness type of expression, and nobody's perfect. I'm not saying that. I'm trying to make a point. And this is more of the sensationalism, like such and such rapper was with such and such baby's mama or whatever, and this happened, and so J-Lo said this, and they'll have the, what I mean? So they'll have the individual speaking, but it's just part of that illusion. But then you have people I come across all the time, and more, and it can be on all types of different platforms. They could be talking about politics, they could be talking about cars, sports, and what I'm seeing is what you're describing. Like someone like you comes out on the camera, and just like you were just told the name, then you start the podcast, and you don't really know what you're going to do till you get there, but you show up.
and that's what I'm saying. I'm seeing these people and they're just showing up like, oh, here's where I'm at. Here's
Definitely.
where I'm at.
The showing up, I had a friend, quite an old friend, like from school days, and he sent me a message the other day saying, oh, I just realized that you've left your law firm and you're out on your own. That's very brave.
Yeah.
And I said, well, that's got nothing to do with courage. It's just alignment with my truth. Because if you have no fear, then you really don't have courage.
This is
zero pointing again, right?
Mm-hmm.
You just got to do it.
Yeah.
You're full of trust anyway. I'm full of trust.
Yeah.
When I was given that feeling that I had to do this, and it was actually over Easter weekend when it all came together. And Easter is just big for me in terms of that rebirthing code. And I was sitting in the sunshine a lot. I went to Tasmania. I was sitting in the sunshine a lot, like meditating with feet on the ground, bare feet on the ground. And I came back with this massive burst of energy, which, I mean, you did Soulogy, so like what I'm talking about compared to the heights I think you were hitting. But when you just can't sleep, you got to get up, you got to work, you got to do it. So that website that I put it together in a week, I was just like, go, 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 go.
You did a great job with it. You did a great job.
I'm loving it, right? Because it's the work. It's the work. It's not about like whether I get kudos or whether I get profile. It's like total alignment with purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. And see, this is what happens. And again, this is a bigger version of what we're talking about field. And it's even the way you show up. You just come and show up with no expectation. Like you're coming in a form of collaboration that you guys are basically trying to and will permeate into the verbiage. I mean, it'll become like, what did you say? Natural law. It'll become a synthesis of what we had and what is. It'll be that new code.
Yeah,
which is fascinating.
Holding that vision is really important. So that utopian organic 3D that we were talking about earlier. One of the things that Amanda's Metaphysical Council is going to do on Friday is we're each to bring our vision of New Earth. So we are creating, in our circle of 12, we'll be creating our version of New Earth, and it will morph. All of our different versions will morph, and we hold it. That's the power of collective creative forces, right, coming together.
Yeah.
So from there, then we go out and we work in our separate areas and fields and so on, and it injects.
You power up. It's like it's like a little Soulogy fest. You come in, you power up, you go back out. You come. Hey, when you guys as you guys get down the road and you're comfortable with somebody observing and filming, whether it's released or not, this is the type of material that needs to be out there.
Yeah, totally. So I've been also guided. So since I started with the revealing my ayahuasca chronicles, the guests I'm interviewing have also, they've started to shift a bit. So you were talking about the dynamic between male lawyers and female lawyers whom I'm interviewing. A lot of the male lawyers I've interviewed are men who really didn't like working within a big law firm structure and went out on their own. So they've set up conventional law firms really, but on their own, so they can bring their own ideas to it. But they're still, like, they're not spiritual, but they are practicing law in a new kind of way, closer to their clients, offering their clients true commitments about, I'm going to show up. You can expect when I'll keep to my word, which is it's funny that lawyers even have to say that to their clients, but this is the world we live in.
Well, I've had quite a bit of experience and it wasn't too good. But I mean, it's not them, it's the system, and that just shows you the power of repetition. It's like a lab. It's like a lab rat, and nobody's or at least in the past, nobody was impervious to that. There's no way.
And now I'm actually moving. So I've done that, and I've had like a lot of these mostly men who are in these new, quite scary for them as well, because a lot of them are giving up security to start up something new. They've got families and so on. But they're saying, thank you for your podcast, because, you know, I'm seeing it's giving me ideas of how to carry out my new practice. But I'm moving away more into, you know, the spiritual lawyers now. And that's the guidance I'm feeling. It's like that work is great, you know, of how to set up a new law firm, etc. But it's got to be more about infusing the ascension part of this process, like making people conscious that we're in the middle of a shift.
Do you have these on Facebook?
I do put them on Facebook. So I put them on both my personal page, Geraldine Grace, and New Earth Lawyer. I have a Facebook page.
You have a Facebook page called New Earth Lawyer?
Yeah.
Let me go join that. Yeah, because I want to watch these videos. I'm at the point now after 200 or 300 hours. New Earth Lawyer. What's it? New Earth Lawyer?
Yeah. So it's New Earth Lawyer. You'll find it there. I put all my episodes up there. And what I do is, I mean, each episode is like a little gem in itself, right? So I take the time with each episode because lawyers love their words.
Is it a group or a page?
It's a page.
Page. Okay, let me check.
Yeah. So lawyers love their words, and with each episode, I put up the audio, so you can download the audio. I put up the video on YouTube, and I do a transcript. So I use an AI platform that produces these transcripts really effective, like very, very scarily accurate.
Is that right?
And so I put the transcript down, and I have an episode page for each guest, and each guest really has their own unique signature, right? Like they'll have their own unique gem that they contribute.
Yeah.
And so it's a record as well.
So you have they have what do I do? Go to guest episodes and then.
Yeah. So guest episodes will show you the guests that I've had.
And
then you can click on
the view list of I'm sorry, go ahead.
You can click on the picture of each person and it'll take you to the episode page. So if you find Amanda Lamont and you click on her, it'll take you to Amanda's episode page.
Very impressive.
The video and then
very powerful.
A little quote.
I'm sorry.
Called transcript.
There's a lag.
Oh, but thank you. It's
there you go. It's back. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. It's very powerful, very professional. I'm very excited. I was just going to say before I went on that search, I've spent, I don't even know, if I'm not on here, I'm on my back a lot or walking, but most of the time I'm on my back these last few weeks. And I think I just can't watch anything. I can't watch a movie. I can't watch a series. I can't watch YouTube. So I'm going to go jump into this. Yeah, I'm going to go watch them. I'm excited to listen to them because I'm always looking for material and ideas. And, you know, this is a platform. I would certainly like it to be a lot bigger than it is, but I'm good with it. And, you know, it's just like you following what you're supposed to do, but it feels right. And I think it's something I'd like to see, especially as you're saying, which is what happens here. Each person that comes on has their own gems. You know what I mean? Their own thing. I mean, so that's to me, that's where the highest code we have gets, or what did we have? And I can't even believe I'm sitting here.
Transformation of that, it's alchemy, right? So we're transforming our code into the physical and connecting it into Gaia and connecting it into each other. Plus, like you said, all of the higher consciousness, our aspects of ourselves, you know, galactic aspects, multidimensional aspects, like what we're creating, the organic 3D is going to be the most unspeakably beautiful paradise. I just feel it.
I'm with you. Well, you know, I remember when we were living in Hawaii and there's no snakes there. So like, you can be anywhere, and not that I was always fearful of snakes, but it was just the idea. Like there was just few animals. There wasn't any, you know what I mean? And there was just this freeing feeling, and you could enjoy the paradise aspect, a little
Yeah.
bit differently. At least I could, and it reminds me of that. It reminds me when you brought that up a week ago, and now that we've been talking about it, and I'm looking out here at the forest in my backyard, and I'm going, wow, like I could walk in there and everything's cool, like, you know what I mean? It's like you don't have to be on your toes,
Yeah.
which is really was a reflection of the whole thing, right? Because we had to be on our toes if we were a lawyer going in the legal system or a corporate guy or whatever. But yeah, I think the 3D organic it definitely sounds like something that I would like to see in my lifetimes. So better now than later.
Well, if Franco's right, you can move in and out, right? So you
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
you can visit. I think I said something on that open mic that you did, where sometimes I say that I'm reporting from inverted 3D. So I work with spiritual groups as well.
Yeah.
I was with the Simon Parks group for a while because he has
Really?
got this connecting consciousness group. Yeah, and
That's interesting.
I would come in and say, oh, just reporting from 3D, whatever was going on about the lockdowns and so on. But it is like that. It's definitely different
Yeah.
spheres of consciousness. You move in and
Yeah.
out of them, and you
Yeah.
choose.
Yeah, and they still have, they all have a multiplicity to them too. I mean, so there's even like, for instance, if you go into, let's say, disclosure, conspiracy, starseed, lightworker platforms, there's a whole flower of life kind of thing going on. You know what I mean? There's different strains and different streams, and you can pick up stuff from all of them.
I
I mean,
agree. I have this idea of this spectrum of where people are, particularly professionals and lawyers. So, I have these 6 categories. There's the service to self, they're not coming with us. There are people who are trapped.
where are they? By the way, we're talking about the 3D organic, and I know everything's frequency, but by the way, where do those people go? Do they go to hell?
I think that they're going to transition off.
Are they the ones they're going to put back in the the black hole and
I
redo
think
them?
they get transmuted in the great central sun.
It reminds me of that. Did you ever see that movie? Oh, you're not very old. There was a movie by.
Gosh, I'm almost 50.
You're not 50. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm almost 60. There was a movie by George Harrison. He directed it, produced, and I think he directed it or produced it, called Time Bandits, and it was with those midgets from Monty Python. But anyway, they had this thing that it was this concentrated evil, and it was just this block of blackness, right?
Mm.
So that's what I was thinking of when you said that.
Yeah.
But anyway, go ahead. What are the 6?
So there's the service itself, and then they're the ones who are trapped. And the ones who are trapped are really interesting because a good portion of them, I think, want to get out into New Earth. And out of those trapped ones, you get the idealists. And I was an idealist. Those of us trying to change things.
Now, is the idealist group a third group or part of, or just a
third group?
Okay.
And they're trying to, like, the trapped are just, they're going about the business day in, day out, slaves to the system. Some of them are just like ready to literally, I'm not joking, like ready to kill themselves.
Yeah, of course.
And then they're the idealists, like get out of victim consciousness, do something, right?
Yeah.
And I was there as well. It's like, okay, but you're still fearful because you don't want to leave the system.
Yeah.
And I was definitely there. It's like, oh, what am I going to do if I leave? But I know I'll fix the system from inside, which is a kind of like, it's a bit of a cop out, right? You try and fix the system from inside, and you really can't do that because the system itself is the problem.
Everywhere you turn, everywhere you turn, you see the devil. They want to sell your soul.
Exactly, and you're basically in league with the devil, and all of your energy is being given to the machine.
Yeah.
So the idealists, then jump out, and they become the rebels. And the rebels are really a great group because out of that, if you can get people, kind of truly, a bit like Franco says, truly aware of the light and the dark, then they can be really effective. Jump into the next group, the redesigners. Then there are the fighters, and that fighting group, that's the kind of patriot group. You think of lawyers like Sidney Powell, right? Like she's in the
Right.
fighting group.
Right.
Great lawyer, like I would say she's probably quite spiritual herself. But she's right in the thick of it. And I think in that fighter group, you probably need some of them. So like someone like Sidney Powell maybe just needs to be where she is. She's signed up for that role. But, most of us, I think, need to leave that energy so that we can start building.
Yeah. Well, but that's an interesting thing as you're laying these 6 out. Okay. Because you would think that the fighter would be on the other end of the spectrum with the whatever you call them, the assholes. But it's interesting because if you look at that energy, and of course you could look at a big example would be, and I'm talking about the movers and the shakers in the Trump energy.
Yeah.
And you saw a lot of coming and going, by the way. So I'm talking about the energy and less the people. You would think that they would be more inclined to have a progressive thinking, to be open, right? Even be associating with Q. I mean, that's to be open to the intel that's brought down. I mean, so what I'm trying to say is that you're right. I think there's still, especially like, for instance, like in an arena like the legal system or say the finance system or medical, you probably are going to have some fighters for a while.
I think so. I really do think so. And that's where the unity movement is going to be really interesting, because the folks that I work with who are building these interesting light field structures and movements it's like oil and water with the fighters in, say, the Trump administration. They don't mix, but there's actually quite a lot of unity there, in that we're both actually trying to move to something better.
Yeah. I agree with that. If you look at if you look at the political, obviously the media, finance, it's easy. Legal, it's a little bit, but it's there. And what I'm trying to say, there really is very few controlling the many, and so these are giant structures where I like this approach where you basically align yourself with the universe in strategy with your colleagues, and then you go in and you quietly enter the fray, and the energy from those nodal points begins to transform the environment itself. So you guys are either going to blow it up, or it's going to be an incredible physical metamorphosis.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what happens, because these few months coming, I think we're all feeling this kind of weird energy, right? If there's a lot of disclosure, then that's going to be a bit of a test for people. It's like, well, do you then jump into fight mode, or do you clear that, move through it quickly, clear it, and then you continue on redesigning mode? So I think there'll be a lot of lawyers who will be caught up in fight mode.
That's yes. I mean, yeah, it would be, you would be defenseless if you weren't in that profession. Well, what are you going to do? You know what I'm saying? I mean,
do you fight the new control structures? So the new control structures are like the public health legislation is a great example right now. Like set up ostensibly for the greater good. Lots of people buy into it. Lots of people, feel safer that we have these laws. But then you read these laws, and they are basically the most tyrannical you can imagine.
Yeah, it's just like after 9/11 with the Patriot Act and all that stuff.
Yeah, so national security and public health are the two most classic examples given to when you'd create an exception to honoring human rights.
Right.
So those two are the national security type legislation and public health legislation.
Hijacked.
That's totally hijacked.
Just like you said about, just like with the word woke, it's the same cycle.
Yeah, it's the easiest thing to jump in and hijack. And so you'll need lawyers, in a sense, if you wanted to fight those hijacked.
Or yes, the thing is, yes, you would absolutely have to. There's no question.
Yeah.
And it sounds like it's starting. Am I keeping you? Do you have a few more minutes?
No. I've got a few more minutes. I'm good.
Okay, so a couple of things I want to dive down. Now, you have been in other groups, and you were telling me that you were part of the Simon Parks group, and I pop into that every now and then, and I go with it sometimes, and then sometimes I move away from it. But that's like everything else, right? Because I absolutely respect everybody's reality. It's an interesting energy. It looks like to me, it's kind of and I'm not talking about him. I'm talking about, and I'm not even talking about his platform. I'm talking about that energy. There's talk of galactic. There's talk of things that we talk about here, and there's also not in a bad way, in an entrenchment at kind of the ground level with a lot of the stuff that's talked about in these, I would say, disclosure platforms versus conspiracy. I think there is a separation there. And I just wonder, like when you said a minute ago, that, and a lot of people have said this, there's going to be a lot of disclosure. Now, we've heard this for 3 or 4 years, but it's really kind of a put up or shut up time now, not just for us. Like, it's time for us to walk the talk, like what you're doing and what your colleagues are doing. And again, as within, without. So if these threats, or whatever you want to call them, or possibilities, that have been out there in the field, and there's more awareness, the energy of our souls is going to push it out anyway. And I'm just wondering, with the groups that you've touched, and your experience and everything and research, like what level do you think we're going to see over the next few months? Like what level of disclosure? Do you think we're going to get like a big bang, or do you think it's just going to continue to be a morsel here and a morsel there?
I actually think it'll be more like a morsel here and a morsel there. I think it's going to be quite big morsels, but if you didn't want to recognize them as the morsels that they are, you could happily exist without really noticing them. Yeah. So, we've already had pretty big disclosures in some ways. But there's still people who just don't realize what they are. I mean, the whole, going back to Trump, say, a lot of disclosures actually just in the way, the energy around Trump and trying to remove him and so on, and the election, there's actually a lot being disclosed there. A lot being disclosed in the sense of, this is how the status quo fights against an interloper. This is the level of corruption. This is the level of deception. I mean, that's disclosure, right?
Yes, it is.
That actually woke me up quite a bit, following all of that. When I look at, I sometimes will write a comment in a newspaper. We have quite a good newspaper here. It's called The Australian.
You're feisty. You're a feisty light worker.
The Australian newspaper is owned by Rupert Murdoch. And it's really interesting because the Murdoch press, I haven't quite figured it out. The Murdoch press is actually disclosing a lot, right, in this whole inverted 3D world. And so sometimes I'll put a little comment in, or read all of the comments below the line. And I have to say that the majority of readers, it's a mainstream newspaper. It's not a tabloid. It's one of the most respected newspapers in this country, national. Most of them are awake, in a sense of they know the shadow. They know what's going on. They know about the role playing. Like Biden is ineffective and all of that.
You got to be pretty asleep not to know that. And I got no political issue here. So, like, what type of, when you say a comment to an editorial, or like letters to the
below the line comment newspapers now are all
Oh, I got you.
online, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
they can,
Here I am thinking. I mean, I used to love reading the newspaper. Here I'm thinking newspaper. I was
no,
like
no, I mean
looking at
online news.
I
But
used to
so
do that too.
so the disclosure that's coming, I think, is going to be about, this is so obviously, we're touching on a lot of controversial issues, but take the jabs. There's so obviously another story there. There's also a monetary story there about,
Yeah, of course.
just how much money big pharma is making out of them, it's et cetera, and also whether there's other treatment options that are being perhaps not investigated as closely as could be. So that story is bursting out also, right? There are scientists and doctors in the US who are getting heavily censored. That story is now very much in the consciousness of mainstream. That's disclosure too, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, if you think back to when that first broke, I still remember watching the videos of, because it was China, right? It was China, then I think
Yeah.
it went to Korea, and it was China, and they would show these videos of these people being chased down by groups of men in hazmat suits.
Yeah.
And all you had to do was put a little bit of old school black and white movie music on it, like the Keystone Cops, like I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
it was like you're looking at it going, that's got to be a joke, and so that and what I'm trying to say is, like, what you're saying is that it's coming through, it's trickling down, and people are getting it, and I think it's going to get to a point. Like I said, to me, it feels like the universe is going, it's time to walk the talk. And
I
even to large or say apparatuses of the matrix. But my question to you is, like, what do you think would happen if, and you don't have to answer this, I'm not afraid of censorship or anything, but I'm just curious. Like, let me put it another way. Do you think that if a country, let's just say the one you're in, said, hey, everyone's got to take a jab, do you think that at that point, or a point like that, that the professionals in a country such as that might stand up and say, hell no? Are enough of them? Do you think that might happen?
think enough would.
Yeah.
We had an example last year. Now, I live in Melbourne, right? And I think the world knows that we went through one of the toughest lockdowns last year.
Yeah.
100 and something days or whatever. And there was a bill that was going through our state parliament that would have given the state government quite a lot of powers, including the power to enter your house without an arrest warrant if there was suspicion that you had. I mean, this is just basic human rights.
Yeah.
Suspicion that you had COVID. And a bunch of senior lawyers and a couple of judges put out a statement saying that this bill went too far. And it didn't get a lot of press, but it was very meaningful. I know that people were putting their name to like a full page ad saying, you can't do this. That's the sort of energy that I think would come up if we went to mandatory vax.
Well, I mean, you can almost see the testing, like testing as in testing the waters. I mean, you can see the patterns. And if you think about where this last run kind of started, or I guess, with any type of strong reference points, would be pre-World War II Nazis, right? So if you look at that type of thing that was initiated, it was able to be done, and still the program has gone on. So it'll be interesting to see what a year and a half of self-introspection on the populace, if that's what occurs, how that energy, how that transformational occurrence, and the result of it, the present being of that populace would take on something like that.
I think it's also the consciousness levels, though, because we're more conscious than we've ever been. And, that's what you were saying about walking the talk. And I have been in lulls, or, in this sort of weeks go by where I'm just like, I've had enough. Like you've been describing on a few recent shows, I've just really
Like
had
every
enough.
show, like right now, I was sitting here 5 minutes before an hour going, how in the hell am I even sitting here? And then I thought to myself, did I just say that out loud? Yeah. So no. And then I'm asking you
That
to stay
showing up
longer.
push, right? That showing up push is like, well, just
Yeah.
show up.
Yeah.
So it's like,
So
show
I'm
up,
sorry.
Todd,
Go.
show up,
Yeah.
Geraldine.
Yeah. Right.
And so that's what's happening with this energy. It's like, stop. It's that if we personally get rid of victim consciousness, so within, so without, if we personally get rid of victim consciousness and do our part, that so powerfully brings in change. And I realized
That's
this as soon as I get into that spell of like, I'm just waiting for the savior to come. I'm waiting for the military to do something or whatever. Then it's like weeks go by and nothing happens. But when I personally say, nope, I'm going to tell people about what happened in Peru when I took ayahuasca. I'm going to put myself out there, and then all of a sudden stuff seems to happen.
That's
I can't
how it
really
works,
explain it.
right?
But that's exactly how it works. We all each have to keep showing up, being ourselves, our true selves, do the work, and we're going to see the change around us.
This is the number one takeaway on this show. And I'm just connecting the dots because it's almost like the first thing I did this morning, and this is about the last thing because I know I'm going to sleep. But I woke up this morning and I went, in the thing, and I was just half in. I was like, you know what? F victim consciousness.
Yeah.
I am so tired of dealing with victim consciousness, and that's not a personal affront to anything or anyone, because I came to the same conclusion that you just said. I thought the one thing I can do is continue to strive to clear victim consciousness, period. And that means if I see it coming up in the road, steer away from it. And that also means keep looking in myself. And I put up a post like, the only virus in this world is victim consciousness, and you don't have to take a jab to fix it.
Exactly.
And that's really, I mean, it's so amazing because we talk about all these different things and the challenges of a transition, and like a lot of the stuff, that the energy of like what we're talking about today. And then you take one thing like that, and say you got, 10,000 people see this over 6 months or something, and 1,000 of them embody in that moment, that make that decision, flip that switch and says, I don't give a shit what the reason is. I don't care what the excuse is. I don't care what happened, circumstance, consequence. I am not going to function from victim consciousness. I am going to, you know what I mean? That would be such a powerful force onto the field. Like that would be like a nuclear bomb.
And so I actually think the months of disclosure that, like you said, we've been hearing this for years, the months of disclosure coming up, I think why you and I and so many others are being pushed to keep doing, keep performing, keep showing up and doing the work is that we are literally going to be the difference in that. That disclosure is not going to fall on deaf ears anymore. People are actually going to listen and go, no, we're doing something.
God, my third eye's like exploding. It's like somebody put a big lag screw in there and started screwing it as you were talking. Yeah, thank you for that. God, I was going to ask you one more thing. God, this is fascinating. It's so fascinating. You seem to be very connected. I mean, and I say that. I mean, like however you do it. Like, I don't know if you work with emissaries of the universe or it's just one voice, but you seem like it's part of your lifestyle.
Yeah. So when I got back from Peru, I connected in Peru when I took ayahuasca with something galactic. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what it was, who it was. And they were quite clear. It's like, you're here to make a change. So we brought you to Peru so that you can get rid of a lot of the the blah blah ego stuff that's going on, and we can talk directly to you. And they did. They spoke directly to me. It wasn't ayahuasca. It was definitely an energy. Told me
Okay.
about the agreement I'd made to come here and all of that. And also told me, like, you can leave now. You're done. You've got the message. And so I've never been called to go back and do plant medicine. You know that Alan Watts saying, when you get the message, hang up the phone.
That's right. I was told the last time I did it, I was told you do not do this again. And I don't do mushroom. I don't do anything anymore.
So I came back and I kept trying to reconnect with him. And because I was heavily in my work, you know, at that point and full of energy, but energy really focused towards very inverted 3D work, I was trying to reconnect and say, like, what the heck am I doing here? You know, like, you've kind of shown me some of it, but come on, guys, like, I don't even know who you are.
Yeah,
exactly, where'd you go? And so I actually sat down one day. I remember sitting down, like, really upset and saying, you know, I promise I will do it, but you got to show me what it is.
Yeah, that's right. There you go.
And they did.
Yeah.
In time. Right.
Yeah.
And then I also began to discern what was, you know, truly something higher and what was ego. That's quite a hard thing for someone like me who's not clearly connected, you know. So it's just about the knowing, and I had to practice it again and again and again. I used to go into an isolation tank, a float tank, to reconnect. I'd say, like, okay, guys, I'm coming. I'm getting into the tank. Like, we're going to have a conversation. I want some clarity. And then I'd get out of the tank and there would be some clarity. But again, it's not like somebody showed up and said, hey, Geraldine, I've got a message for you.
Yeah, they like to do that to get you to strengthen your intuitive muscles and get them
Yeah. And then it got to a point where it became more me. And now I have pretty good discernment. It's also about, like, realizing who they were. So the first message that happened in Peru was more like they telling me. You know, it was a little bit like I was, you know, a lower consciousness. Almost. The energy wasn't rude, but it was like, we're here to tell you what's going on. And then over time, I've kind of leveled up. And in my meditations now, I've recognize that it is a team, and I'm sort of the representative here of the team. So when I ask for something, that's totally my right. It's like, okay, I'm going to do this work, but you've got to give me, you know, you got to provide for me. I've got to actually have some way of, you know, if I'm going to set up a website, I've got to make sure that I've got all of the supplies and whatever I need. The right people are going to show up, etc., etc. So it's like a complete team effort now. Still not perfecting it. We're still improving it, obviously, like we all are. But that's how I work. I know my truth now very strongly. So that's a lot of people, like even my family who know me obviously forever, say to me, like, you know, we don't question your choices because you just seem to know what you're doing. So as long as you're okay,
you've done enough crazy stuff, and after a while, I know, I get it. I'm just making a joke. Yeah,
but
that's
it.
That's one.
So it's just that connection can happen. I'm like a totally normal person. I don't bring in code. I don't speak light language. You know, I don't channel, but I have a direct line into the team, and I
like the because obviously it's there. You know, I mean, and I like the description. Because there are these moments. I had one a couple nights ago, and where I don't know. To me, it feels like your heart aligns with your clarity, but it's really based on the desire. Like you're not begging, but you're going, hey, I'm ready. I'm in. I get it, but I need some. And every time that happens, it comes. Right.
Yeah.
Like in that moment, I got like this vision, and it showed me exactly some things that I would literally do. And I was like, okay. And then, you know what I mean? There's something about that, bringing that human to the party.
Yeah.
There's a part you don't, and a part, it's weird. And you were talking about it a second ago. Like, how do you decipher ego from this? And I wrote another meme today because I was in the same wavelength today all day long. And it was like, intellect, let's say intellect is to ego what intelligence is to soul. right? And what I was
Mm-hmm.
what I was feeling, it wasn't that the intellect wasn't a tool, but there's a part of it that, like the overthinking, the egoic part, the part that you have to decipher from when you get your information. Um, and so when I think about that, and now talking to you, and then how you're approaching this and going into your field, you're doing that, and choosing the 3D organic, right?
Yeah.
Like you're choosing it. So you're taking that human, that part that gets that connection, that part that because that intellect is in that gray area between ego and mind. Like there's something there, they don't say mind, body, spirit for nothing. So there's a mind going on there, but what part of that mind was mine and what part was hijacked, So
Yeah, and
I
the
love it.
mind
I
is,
love it.
to go back to Franco again, Franco talks about the mind as part of the whole complex, right?
Mm,
And how powerful it is as a computer. So being able to tap into it is a real gift when you
yes.
can separate out the ego. And I have been very much in the mind my whole life.
Yeah.
And I was very uncomfortable with it when I was first on the awakening path, because that was part of my shadow. Like the mind had so much to do with the egoic part of me. Lawyers especially, we just like to show off our intellect. We like to win intellectual points.
Yeah.
So I had to come to terms with it being a part of me that I embraced. It wasn't bad. It wasn't negative. It's just part of me. And then bring it back into myself and honor it and say,
Yeah.
okay, I happen to have been given certain gifts, and maybe my gifts are not the type where I'm very intuitive or very psychic. Maybe my gifts are more on the intellectual side, which is all cool, right? That's fine. And so use those intellectual gifts to reach people, and also to help me to discern. The mind is yeah. In my case, like in this incarnation, I think the mind has a lot to do with my purpose. I actually remember even in and will that kind of discipline also.
Yeah.
I also thought it was shadowed, because that made me a workaholic.
Well, the will is, and there you go again, and it's always that paradox, right? Because the will, like the ego, I mean,
Yeah,
there's a very fine line, but there is a quality. You know what? You might even look at it like this. It's like, okay, so in the mind, right, in the intellect, there is part of it is this is a reflection of the distorted, inverted 3D, and part of it is the organic, and
yeah,
the other
yeah,
part, if you follow his intel, that would be an implant anyway. The ego was basically an implant to work with the projection of the inverted matrix, but you could see too, as we're transforming, even in a biological way, that energetically that stuff's being transformed. I mean, it's our whole story. It's all of us. It's just like what you talked
yeah.
about with what happened last year, and or with the election, and it being part of your wake up to, because the disclosure came through, right? I mean, that actually ends up being a energetic metamorphosis that we're all going to say carve into the light body.
Yeah. And there's also an interesting thing that's happening with using our mind and our will and all of the things that we have here as humans. So, describing the organic 3D structures that we're creating here, I have a sense also that there's an interest from the team, if you like. It's like, yeah, build it,
Yeah.
because like you said, we want the code, because
Yes.
like, give us the code.
Yeah.
You're down there, you're going to build it with
Yeah.
everybody. Give us the code, because this is so precious. We're going to be able to roll it out in other places. Like,
Yes.
we may create other worlds that are Earth-like, and we
Yeah.
might take parts of what you're building. And I feel very strongly that's part of my purpose. So, coming in with all of the things that I've decided to do, the way whoever I was born to, whatever education I was given, like why. We all have this question of why that particular combination of things. It's almost like it's so that you can help to build and give us this universal code that is going to create
It's real time
walls all over the place.
Yeah, it's real time intel. It's real time
intel. Have
intel.
our human imprint on it.
That's right. It's such a macro, micro, macro thing. Like the macro being all the universal seed that makes up our DNA, and we go into this vortex and this human experience, and it's very dense. And we come out the other side, and and this is where the payoff is.
Yeah.
I talked to Franco when I was in Sedona. We spent a couple of nights together in Kimberly, and through those discussions, I got a lot of downloads. And one of the downloads that I received was specific to what you're saying, and I was shown it in Franco's life. I was shown it in my life, and it's the same thing. And basically, the template was this: we make the agreements, we come down. There's a template laid out. It's not a predetermination, but it's a path. And then we go down that path, and then we wake up and we get it, and we start to get in alignment with it, just like you are right now, right? Or you could even say I do Soulogy. That was my original template, right? And then because you're in that high efficacy category, like you're operating in the 95th, 98th percentile, 100th percentile, and you're really grooving, another catalyst is thrown in, like a turbocharger is thrown into the engine, and you, because you have this field of present consciousness, of a creative fertile womb that's been created in the moment by the energy that's gotten you to where you're at. And now you can throw something in there and you can see, and you can and push for it, because you've got the type of energetic being that's already in such a forward motion. I saw this as clear as day, and it actually helped me to understand what I'm doing right now. Like, why is Morgan in Australia?
It goes back to the start. Like, you start where you are, get onto it, because like that thing you're talking about, that turbocharge being dropped in. If you were given the whole picture to start, you might have just gone, "Oh, no way." I mean, I'm not saying that. Like, really?
Hey, somebody came on the other day, and they were like, and I'm not saying this to be funny at all, because they came on and they had intel or sight into, I guess, new souls coming in, and they were saying that you've got like 3 choices to leave at this point.
I saw that.
Did you see that? But that's what it reminds me of. Like, I there's a part of me that goes at times, you did not tell me what I was getting into. And then I can almost hear my higher self laughing, going, "Hey, you're the one that set this all up. Quit your bitching," kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I would think that
actually been shown the sort of, visually the meeting where, it was all going to go down, and like the original plan, right? And obviously I have the visual of the meeting, but not the actual plan, just bits of it. And the mood I felt, right, was like pure excitement. I was just coming in, Man, and even the visual was like it was like a balmy evening somewhere. I don't know why I selected this visual. Balmy evening, like on some sort of Italian, patio or something, right? And it was like all getting together and going, yeah, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And it was just all perfect and fun.
Yeah.
So that's I remind myself now, every time I sort of get really down, I remind myself like that was the energy. We were talking about that earlier today, how we're so used to what was fantastic just 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Like, so many of us in our own ways have had things happen and occur, and it's magical and miraculous. And then we get to 2021, and it's a typical day, and you're on your back
purging and going, what the hell, right? But there's this is where I've been going in the last 2 weeks, to everything on the path from the last 10 years. I mean, to all the things that happened to me, to Morgan and I together, me and other people, and the you can't make it up. I mean, you can see the magical thread. You can see the alchemy. You can see the trail. You know what I mean? You can see it. You can't see very far, but
No,
I
I
think we're
liken
doing.
it to I liken it to there's that scene, and I bring this up a fair bit. There's a scene in one of the Indiana Jones movies where he has to. I think he's after the Holy Grail, and he realizes that if he's looking at this abyss, this endless abyss, and he's got to somehow get over it to the other side to get the Holy Grail, and he realizes that it's about taking that step.
Yeah.
And then he actually steps out into the abyss, and bloody hell, the bridge forms, right? And it was there all along. And that's exactly what this is. It's like you got to take that first step, and you got to trust, because that bridge will be there.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, fascinating conversation. NewEarthLawyer.com. I'm going to put it back up again. Let me put it back up again. New Earth. I'm going to go watch these tonight. New Earth. I just got to figure out how to put them on my TV.
Well, they're on YouTube. So there's a New Earth.
Oh, they're on YouTube.
Yeah, New Earth Lawyer channel on YouTube too. That's the.
Oh, well, I'll just watch it on YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
that'd be awesome.
Be some that will be more in your lane, and others that won't be, but just
I watch all kinds of stuff. I do. I really look for the energy, and I don't know what it is I look for. It's just that internal guiding system, but I watch lots of different topics. I'm more pay attention to people, their mannerisms, their style. The topics are good, and even like how they talk about whatever their field is. I mean, there's just, soul is soul.
I'll also put up Amanda Lamont's link to her page and her message, because I saw at least one person has asked for it, and it's a great message. Needs to be.
Now that's the one you were talking about earlier.
Yeah. So that's the lady, the lawyer who channels.
Okay.
And I'll carry on with the work.
I just would love to get with you again.
And
we'll.
My pleasure.
Let me just do something 3D because I can't do anything anymore. God, and see, I don't know. And I don't know about you, but are you having energy burst? Like, are you? Because I'm not. I'm like full of energy, and then all of a sudden I get really drowsy, and I know something's coming. And that's been I've been like that since before we got on.
Yeah. So my messaging has been very much to look after my physical body. So ever since Peru, in fact, before Peru, I was already on this kind of health kick. But in Peru, I got a message to not make it about ego, because I was one of those people who drove myself to get fit and everything. And I tied it very much to ego and pride. Got a big kick in the ass in, as you always say, in Peru. Like they showed me what it's like to be without it, and said, don't take it for granted. So since then, I have looked after my body just as a matter of caretaking almost, and cooperation. So it's been made, I feel, clear to me that if I don't look after my body, then whatever channel I have with the team is going to be affected, as well as my ability to keep doing my work. So, to go back to your question, I don't go up and down a lot. I have to be quite disciplined in my approach. So I do a fair bit of physical exercise, but never push myself. I used to push myself, but pull it back to something that's sustainable. My body doesn't break down. Eat really super healthily. No drinking, no animal products. And a lot of that became very natural. It wasn't a problem to give it up. But if I don't do that, I feel it's going to be more difficult. It's just the vehicle I've chosen.
Yeah, there's no. I think there's no doubt. A lot of people have been talking about the body, and what you said too about that natural. That I didn't think I'd come back and still be juicing 5-6 weeks later. I mean, I'm taking in, but there's something going on there. But I like what you said too about the collaboration between you or like me and my body. Like there's
Yeah,
actually a conversation going on there, just like with the human and the higher self, Todd and the higher self, or Todd and you know what I mean. There really is.
there totally is.
Yeah,
And I run a fair bit, so I love running, and I've had conversations for a long time with my body while running, and it's just an extension of that. And I really do think it's a personal thing, and that's why I don't make a big deal out of it
yeah.
to other people.
No,
I think some people can transmute whatever it is
yeah.
that they're consuming or doing, and I just can't.
It would only make sense. I mean, why would the diversity in makeup and ethnic characteristics be as they are on the earth in the physical? Why wouldn't it be the same as we go back in time from our lineage, galactic, and so on? I mean, you look at the people like where my family, the Mexican American, they have a very high blood pressure. Like it's
Yeah,
just they can handle high blood pressure. It does in other ethnicities it would be a disaster. But so there's you just don't know. But yeah, I
yeah,
do think regardless of that. Now I don't know. There might be people that eat animal all day long, but there just seems to be this thing. No people are eating less.
yeah.
The sleep thing is different for everyone, and I'm talking like 15 hours a day. It's not longer than that, like more like 20 hours a day, 21 hours a day. Sometimes I'm up, and a
Yeah.
lot of times I'm resting, consciously resting. But most of the time I have good energy. It's just there's these periods where it's literally you just feel like a download's coming in, and you're going to
I
have to
do.
lay down.
That
Yeah.
that has happened. So, coming back from Tasmania when I was really excited about this project, the New Earth Lawyer project,
Hmm.
I was sleeping about 4 or 5 hours a day
Hmm.
for weeks. It was probably about 4 weeks at a stretch. Um, and I was full of energy and I felt really clear. And around that time, I did a juice cleanse as well. That was also part of it. It's like you get ready to do this, go and clean your body out. So I did like a 7-day juice cleanse, which was pretty intense, right?
Yeah.
Um,
So that was just
and
juice and water. Juice
that
and
was
water.
just juice and water.
Yeah.
Um, and by about the 5th day, I was like raring to get into this project, but it was very, very clarifying, and I definitely had the message. It's like, yep,
Yeah.
you need to do this because your clear body is going to give you that
Yeah.
clarity of connection and going to get your mind, set in the way it needs to be.
I
So it's
yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
connection.
That's a good way to explain it. It's almost like you have like a big old speaker. Like when I was a kid, you get those big bass speakers, and it's sitting over in the corner of the room. It's got all this dust on it, right?
Yes.
You know what I mean? I mean, because you're actually increasing the ability to receive and to transmit by doing this. And I'm not an expert. I'm just saying that this juicing thing, there's a reason I'm still juicing. For as much as I'm taking in, and for me anyway, from my perspective, uh, as much as I'm dealing with, this juicing thing has been like a foundation, like a constant, like something I could count on. Like
Yeah.
I'm about
Th-
to juice for the day now, and I'll be full of energy for 4 or 5 hours.
There's
And
also, I mean, there was one thing I will add is like when I was given my download on purpose in Peru, when I did ayahuasca, I was tested beforehand, like going under the influence, there's that period when it's taking effect. And
Mhm.
I was having this conversation with ayahuasca, and it was asking me, because at that point of time, I stopped drinking alcohol, and it was a conscious choice. And ayahuasca asked me about 5, 6 times, like, are you going to drink alcohol anymore? And every time I was like, no, no, no. I mean, I'm done. I am totally happy like this.
Mhm.
And I had no idea why I was being asked this question, right? And then I went deeply under, and that's when the next thing I remember is having this conversation with this new energy, this galactic energy.
Yeah.
And later on, I realized that it was like really testing me to see how committed I was before
Yeah.
my purpose was revealed to me.
Yeah. I mean, I always question, and I just, because I'll say something like, you know, things could be said a different way. Like, if I feel there's any judgment, I certainly have to look at myself. Is it me? But if I
Yeah.
feel like, and it doesn't happen a lot, but I have to respect my sovereignty. But like, I got that message on the alcohol June 7th, and it was like done, like, I mean, it was just like, I've craved micheladas, which is a kind of a Bloody Mary thing in a beer. Mexicans do it with
Okay.
lime. So it's more of a taste thing, but I won't even stop and do it because I don't know. There's just something clicked or something. I can't explain it. But so, my only point in talking about this is what your thoughts were, that you explained, which is that there's something happening with the body. And I think not only is it speaking, but it's actually holding a space that used to be with other aspects of myself, right? Like I can actually, and maybe I'm weird and maybe I'm the only one, but I have conversations with my body and it talks to me now. I mean, in a way that it never had. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah. And
In a way.
yeah, once you start listening to the body gets really happy about it too. It's like you're finally listening to me.
Yeah.
And then just the happiness, you feel it, right? Yeah. It's like we're working together, where you're going to take me this far. I'll say to my body, like, let's say I want to go for a run, we're going to go this far today, and the body's like, yeah, okay. Or other times it's like, nah, I don't think so. We're only going to go this far. It's just it is interesting, and it makes me so happy to be in this particular vessel. So I was just thinking about this a couple of days ago. I was like, I think I took a lot of care choosing this vessel, and I think it was because this was going to be the vessel where it happened, ascension happened. And I actually think that we're getting much closer to a point where it was the vessel that I intended it to be.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful feeling.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. That's cool. Well, I mean, one of the things too that I've noticed in these discussions and this evolution, which has been very recent, has been the judgments leaving. Like, there's something about the connection that's transcended judgment, self-judgment, everything, and that's one of the things I would say that's different. Because I mean, I would say 6 months ago, my body spoke to me. My body spoke to me 2 years ago, but not like this. This is almost like it's a more of a multidimensional aspect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. So I think mine is more of a intuitive thing. I'd be really interested to start having conversations.
Well, mine's intuitive. Don't get me wrong. It's not like we're like, like you could record the conversation, but it's clear. It's very, very clear. And I'm not, I guess it wouldn't have been that part of me that made it feel like judgment. I had to get to a point of where I was clearing self-judgment to you know what I mean, to have this type of.
It's also the stopping and asking, right?
True.
Okay, I didn't used to do that. It's like, well, I feel like eating. Well, let's see if the body feels like eating.
Yeah.
Or even maybe jumping past that step. Like eating intuitively. Sometimes I'll have a light dinner at 5 o'clock in the evening, which is very early, or sometimes I'll have a heavier dinner later. But there's no rhyme or reason. It's just like what I feel like doing.
I've been thinking about fasting just water. I did it one time for 3 days in a pyramid, a guy had made a pyramid, and I lived in it for 3 days, and I did it, and it was pretty powerful. But there was a lot of stuff going on, so I don't know if I really. But it just feels like that might be helpful. People talk about intermittent fasting, and
Yeah.
I think to me that probably that sounds more doable to me. Like maybe a couple of days, 2-3 days, like I did with the juicing when I got here. I tried to do 3 days. I usually make it to the third day, and then I'd have to have a meal. But I didn't really consider it fasting. I was just trying to drink, just eat through, the juicing. And so I kind of adopted this. Okay, I'm gonna drink 4 of these a day, and make the juice, and then one meal. And then I noticed the meals started getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Right? It's weird. So I don't know. I like what you said too about you like to feel that you chose this body in particular because it's the one where it's going to happen.
Yeah.
That feels good. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing everything. I
Been a
can't believe I
pleasure
made it 2 hours. I was going to try to cut it off at 55 minutes.
Well, I'm really humbled. I couldn't imagine that
I'm
I'd be
humbled.
on Soulogy talking 2 hours. So
I'm humbled, and I'm going to check your stuff out, and I'll reach out to you, about collaborating again. And I'm also going to pick your brain a little bit on that translator, or the whatever that thing is.
Oh, the transcript.
The transcript, yeah. I want to. Yeah. I'm sure that stuff's out there. I'd like to just cut to the chase and not have to go research it and find whatever you're using. But and just other things too. And if you know of anyone that would be a great candidate, and same here. I can't off the top of my head I know we have lawyers in the community, but I can't think of any right now.
Oh gosh, if there are any lawyers out there, like send me a message. I'd love to hear from them.
Yeah, that's right. Anybody sees this and you're an attorney and you want to go on a podcast and have a conscious conversation, then here she is. NewEarthLawyer.com. I love you. Thank you.